Okay, so let's do this. As I said, our first speaker of the afternoon is absolutely gold. Her theme is Fireproof Your Career, the Burnout Free Lifestyle. Yes, so people call her, I love this, some people call her the Corporate Hippie, which I love. Yes, woo indeed. She is an award-winning corporate burnout prevention consultant, a certified lifestyle coach, a TED speaker, and founder of the Fireproof career. Amazing. As a leading authority on burnout, Subira collaborates with global brands like Channel 4, Deloitte, the Financial Times, and many, many more. So please, please welcome on stage, ladies and gentlemen, Subira Jones. Yes! Welcome.
Olá, boa tarde. Minha fala português, mas quero aprender. Thank you very much, but it ends there, so English from now on. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Happiness Camp. Who's excited to be here? I personally am so excited to be on this stage today because I think happiness is contagious when we're able to catch it. And if there's anything we want to catch, it's happiness. However, in 2019, 3 things happened that brought all of us here today. The first thing, over 54% of working days were lost due to stress-related ill health. Over half our working days lost due to stress. The second thing, the World Health Organization predicted that burnout and depression would become the leading cause of disability, second only to cardiovascular disease. And the third thing, in 2019, that prediction from the World Health Organization became my reality. But before I tell you how I went from a burnt out, depressed and anxious mess of an investment analyst to an award-winning corporate burnout prevention consultant, let's make sure we're all on the same page. There is a difference between being burnt out and being run down. They're not the same thing. Bear with me. Imagine you had a laptop and you're using it all day for work. Eventually, that laptop will die, right? Not a problem. Put on the charger, and you're good to go. That's what it's like to be run down. We are humans, incredible, but still humans. And when we've been working really hard in intense environments, tight deadline, high pressure, we're going to get tired. And that's okay. But what happens when that laptop dies, and no matter how long you leave it on charge, it won't turn back on? Or if it does, it continues to overheat, cuts out, and can no longer perform at its optimum. That is what it means to be burnt out. Now, as a corporate burnout prevention consultant, I have a really fun job. I get to work with companies to help them create sustainable, high-performance workplaces. And we've heard great conversations today about how to create that organizational culture you need to foster corporate happiness and high performance. But there's a second prong to the approach, and that's about all of you taking ownership of your well-being, designing a lifestyle you need to fireproof your career from burnout so you can excel. That is what we're going to be talking about today. So let's go on a journey. We're going to go back to 2019, like I mentioned before. And I was sat in front of my neurologist, and he said, Subira, you have multiple sclerosis. Now, for those of you who don't know what multiple sclerosis is, sometimes known as MS, it is an autoimmune condition that affects your brain and your spine. I asked my consultant, well, where had I gone wrong? He said I hadn't. He said these things just happen to people. What he didn't know is I'm an analyst, and I don't want to hear that. I want causation, or correlation at the very least, right? So I started reflecting on my life. And up until that point, I had the perfect work-life balance, so I thought. I was an investment analyst in my early 20s. I went to the gym 6 times a week, sometimes twice a day. Predominantly plant-based. Practiced yoga. Meditated religiously like a good millennial. And when the reporting season was over, I was in a 5-star, all-inclusive resort with the girls. Until one day, I went to bed with the flu, and the next morning, I woke up, and I couldn't feel anything below my hips. But it didn't stop me from working. No, that can't stop me. So I carried on writing reports, just from home. Within a few weeks, I started experiencing migraines for the first time. And now, I was forced to take time off work. But 1 week of work was long enough. The idea of going back to the office with an overflowing inbox was enough to induce a migraine on its own. So I took 5 days off work and went back on a Friday morning instead. Stood in front of the mirror, ready to do my makeup. I closed my left eye and realized I couldn't see anything out of my right eye. I became nervous and paranoid that my colleagues were going to see my performance had started to slip. So I did what most people do when, your life is falling apart. I got a new job. I left investment consultancy and went over to asset management and got a 10K pay rise with less complicated work. I had found my solution, right? Wrong. I had found myself sat in front of a neurologist being diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And if I was honest with myself, that perfect work-life balance was masking the fact that I was the furthest thing from happy. So let's go further back in time. It's 2015. I'm studying economics, and it's my final year. And I received a call from my sister to let me know that my mum had just had a heart attack, and the paramedics are trying to resuscitate her. Sounds cliche, but my mum was my best friend. So I went back home to see what the situation was, at which point she was in a medically induced coma and there was nothing I could do. So true to fashion, when your life is falling apart, you throw yourself into something you can control, right? So that's what I did. I went back to university and I completed my economics degree. I wrote a 10,000-word, first-class, socio-econometric dissertation in 48 hours, handed in 1 minute before the deadline, with my mum in a coma. Once I graduated, I knew I wasn't ready for the real world, so I threw myself into waitressing. Again, just trying to feel like I had some sort of control, right? I worked double shifts, I worked triple shifts. By my birthday that year, I thought I was going out for drinks and dinner with the girls, and instead, I woke up to find that sepsis had cancelled my plans. And I spent the next 7 days fighting for my life in hospital. The year after that, my uncles had enough and demanded when I was going to get a good job, waitressing was not good enough anymore. So I sent my CV into the world, and an investment company offered me an interview. So sure enough, I went for the interview, and I thought, this is great. I'm about to be 24 years old with a real job. Just before I was due to start this new job, the day after my birthday, my mum suddenly but peacefully passed away. Me, yet again, desperate to retain control over my life, I started my first investment job 4 days after her funeral. That's when my perfect work-life balance began. And I think we can all agree, given the story I just told you, I was the furthest thing from being happy. And it was time to make a change. I wanted to take back control over my life, but for real. So I decided the first thing I needed to do was take a career break. Couldn't afford to quit though, could I? I had decided that retail therapy was easier than actual therapy and had £8,500 worth of debt to contend with. I definitely couldn't quit. So I paid off £7,500 in 5 months so I could afford to leave my job, and that's when things started to change. I started to become obsessed with burnout, because up until that point, it was obsessed with me, and I kind of liked the new power dynamic. So I left the investment world and retrained as a holistic health practitioner. I wanted to better understand what it was that was enabling me to thrive under pressure, but still end up at rock bottom. And then it occurred to me, stress is just like fire. It can be productive and constructive when it's well managed and well utilized. However, stress, just like fire, when mismanaged, misutilized, or worse, we don't know it's occurring, has the potential to be catastrophic and disastrous. So if stress is like fire, then burnout is like a house fire. And imagine calling the fire brigade for help, and their response is, "We're really sorry we can't make it, but could you please just breathe in and breathe out?" Ridiculous, right? Yet that's what I was doing with my work-life balance. So I realized it was time for a change. It was time to put those fires out in my life. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, how do I know which fires to put out? Here's an easy way to do a little audit on your life. Separate them. Necessary, unnecessary. And if we're honest with ourselves, we contend with a lot of unnecessary stress that we don't have to. The necessary stress are those that are productive and constructive and help you to reach that goal, to excel in your career, or quite frankly, are just part of your day-to-day life, but they have a very defined endpoint. The unnecessary stress are the things like the consumer debt that I had, people in your life who actually you probably could put some boundaries to separate yourself from, or living in a way where you're simply just going through the motions. I decided that if I really wanted sustainable change in my life, I needed to create the Burnout Free Lifestyle. A lifestyle that was stress mitigating, i.e., I put out those fires. A lifestyle that was fulfilling. I needed to understand who I was, what motivated me, what actually, fills me with joy. Where was my North Star in this world? And thirdly, fun. We're all here for happiness, right? But how many of us can say that we truly live a happy life day to day? I wasn't. I was existing, never truly living. And so I decided enough was enough. It was time to create that burnout-free lifestyle. I put out all those unnecessary fires, including paying off that debt, and saying bye to people who'd been around just a little bit too long. I decided to reevaluate my core values, what I wanted from life, and decide unapologetically that I was going to align everything I do with it, both in work and in my personal world. And lastly, I decided that I was going to do more things that brought me joy, that lit me up, that made me feel like I was truly part of this world we live in. And in doing so, for the last 3.5 years, almost 4, I've been symptom-free of multiple sclerosis without any medical intervention. And I now have the joy of helping people, incredible, driven, talented people like yourselves, do exactly the same thing. If stress is like fire, and burnout is like a house fire, then why not fireproof your career so that you can achieve the life that you want, the career that you want, without the threat? Thank you very much.